Hello aspirants, welcome to PW OnlyIAS English channel. I am Harpreet Singh here with the daily analysis of the Hindu from the 18th of September 2024. Let's begin with today's analysis. The news that we have taken for today's analysis are center-state relationships and emergency, large language models, women-led development. From the editorial, we have taken the death penalty and demographic advantage and economy and their relationship. So let us begin with today's analysis. Okay, this particular article was mentioned in the Hindu. Now this deals with how do emergency provisions impact the center-state relationships. Now this has been in light because of the violence that is taking place in the state of Manipur and what aspects or what action can be taken from the part of the central government. So that is why this article has been there in the Hindu. Now, if we want to understand this, we need to go into a lot of details also in understanding the aspect of emergency and how it is going to impact the central state relationships. Now, please understand this topic is very, very important when you are doing GS paper 2, the Indian polity and the constitution section. And this can be asked in this year's paper, mains paper, and also in your preliminary examination. So let's see the various dimensions that are associated with this particular topic. Now see a little bit of background. When we are talking about center-state relationships, we know that the federal setup is a basic structure of the Indian Constitution, right? As given by the Honorable Supreme Court. Now, what is the meaning of a federal polity? See, it means that the powers and responsibilities are constitutionally divided between the central government and the regional government. You would be seeing when you read Indian polity and constitution, you have certain subjects which are in the union list, some in the state list, and obviously we've had the concurrent list also. That means there are certain things that the state government has the power, and with respect to certain matters, the central government has the power. So that means there is basically division of power. So that is why we say power and responsibilities are constitutionally divided between the central government and the regional government. The regional can be over here, state for that matter. Now, what are the features of a federal polity when we read? First, division of power that we have seen, dual structure of government, we have supremacy of the constitution, we have an independent judiciary, and we have the concept of cooperative federalism. Now, these are certain features that those are basics that you read about the federal setup or the Indian polity, you generally know. Now, why we did this? Because we are studying center-state relationship. Now, having understood what you understand by the concept of federal polity, let us move ahead and see the provisions related to emergency. Now, please, this is the main important thing that we have to understand over here. See, if I talk about the concept of emergency, with respect to the constitution, there are three important types. First is the national emergency. Second is the state emergency, which is also known as president's rule or constitutional emergency, which is the major concern of this particular topic or the article. And the last is the financial emergency. Now, let us see in brief all of them. The national emergency, basically Article 352 deals with that. Now, it can be declared on the grounds of war, external aggression, or armed rebellion. The state emergency, which is also known as the president's rule or the constitutional emergency, the Article 356 deals with this. Now, which is important for this particular topic. So, when the governance of a state cannot be carried out in accordance with the provisions of the constitution. Supposing there is a state and its governance cannot be carried out according to the provisions of the constitution, in that case, president's rule can be imposed. Clear? Next, financial emergency, Article 360. Now, what does the constitution state about this? When a situation has arisen where the financial stability or credit of India or part of it is threatened, that means there is a financial crisis in the India as a whole or some part of it. In that case, a financial emergency can be declared. We have never had financial emergency in India, and luckily we should not have also, because India is a growing power and we wish or all the best. So with respect to these three, we have three types of emergencies. Now let us go ahead and see or discuss about the state emergency. Please understand, it is very, very important. Overall, the constitution mentions three types of emergencies. Now focusing on the state emergency, which is a concern of this particular topic. Now with regard to that, there are three articles that you should know, because the provisions and understanding of these articles are very important if you want to understand the article. There is one article 355, 356, which we have just read, and article 365. Understand each of them carefully. Article 355 states that it is the duty of the union or the central government, to protect every state against external aggression and internal disturbances. Now, this article makes or gives the responsibility to the central government that you need to protect every state. States like Uttar Pradesh, Jammu Kashmir, where elections are going to be held now, Manipur, Uttarakhand, any state. Now, it is a duty of the union to protect every state against what? External aggression. Certain external powers are coming and trying to, let us say, intervene, or let us say, harm country as a whole or a particular state. For that matter, let us say you have a possible attack in border regions. So it is not only an attack on that particular state, it is an attack on India also. That is why external aggression, and obviously if there are certain internal disturbances, then also. So it is the duty of the union. Second, to ensure that governance and government in every state is carried out in accordance with the provision of the constitution. That means the governance in that particular state is carried on according to the provisions of the constitution. Now, these are two things which are mentioned in Article 355. Clear? First, it is a duty of the union to protect every state from what? External aggression and internal disturbances that take place. Next is to make sure, the union government has to make sure that the governance in the particular state is carried on in accordance with the provisions that have been there mentioned in the constitution. Now comes Article 356, the very important article. See, based on the report from the governor of a state, or otherwise, the president is, if the president is satisfied that the situation has arisen where the government of a state cannot be carried on in accordance with the provision of the constitution. Now, please understand this. The governor is a representative of the center. Yes, it is a representative of a president also, but of the central government. Where a government presents a report to the president that the governance or the government of this particular state is not being carried according to the provisions of the constitution, in that case, this particular article can be invoked. What does it mean? Article 356 confers the power upon the union to ensure Article 355 becomes effective. See, it is very important. When this article is invoked, it basically means the president rule is being imposed in that particular state. As we said, Article 356, under Article 356, the president rule is invoked, right? So, Article 356 deals with the president rule. But if we see that the provisions are not being followed of the constitution with respect to the state, then that is encoded in Article 355. So that means if I am using this article, that means I am satisfied that there is violation of this particular article, because this particular article states that the union has to make sure that the state is carried on in accordance with the provisions of the constitution. That means if I am invoking this, that means this was being violated. Clear? But the president rule, when is being invoked, it is under this particular article, that is 356. Now see here, Article 365, it states that whenever a state whenever any state fails to comply with or give effect to any direction from the center. That means certain directions have been given by the central government to the state government. You have to comply by these directions, and the state government fails to comply by those directions. What happens? Then it is lawful for the president to hold that state cannot be carried out in accordance with the provision of the constitution. Now see, under Article 365, the thing is that center is giving certain guidelines to the state, any state for that matter. Let us say Uttar Pradesh, Punjab, Uttarakhand, and that particular state or the government of a state say that we will not follow these guidelines. That means that the president now knows that the state is not following, that means in going accordance with the constitution, thereby Article 356 can be invoked. Clear? In case failing to comply by the guidelines of the center, this will lead to what? That means this is Article 355 is being violated. If Article 355 is being violated, then Article 356 can be used to impose president's rule. So these three things are very, very important. You can just have a look at them. If you understand this concept, it will make you very easy for you to remember it also, right? Just a quick revision. Article 355 says that the duty of the state, the duty of the central government to protect the state against external aggression and internal disturbances, and they have to make sure that the government of the particular state follows or goes in accordance with the provision of the constitution, right? This particular article basically states that a president rule is imposed under this article because the governor might present a report to the president and say that the governance of a particular state is not going according to the constitution provisions. So we can impose president's rule because Article 355 is being violated. In case 365 means that the guidelines that were given by the central government are not being followed. So that means, this means that Article 355 is being violated. If 355 is being violated, that means the Article 356 can be invoked. This is about the state emergency or the president's rule. Let's move ahead. Impact of the state emergency on the central state relationships. See, assumption of the state powers by the central government. The central government holds the power which were earlier being held by the state government. Parliament's authority over the state legislature. Suspension of the constitutional provisions. That means the president can suspend certain constitutional provisions related to the state governance. 3. Along with it, there are other provisions. See, dismissal of the Council of Ministers by the President of India. Next is administration by the governor, because the Council of Ministers have been dismissed. So what happens? The governor, along with the bureaucracy obviously, is dealing with the administration. Dissolution or suspension of the state legislative assembly can happen. Delegation of the legislative power. That means under Article 357, the Parliament may transfer the legislative power to the President, who may further delegate these powers to another authority when needed, so that the major legislative works can be carried on. Next, authorization of the state expenditure. The Parliament can empower the President to authorize expenditure from the state consolidated fund during the President's rule, because see, the expenditure also has to carry on and authorization is also required. So this can be done by the Parliament, which empowers the President to authorize expenditure from the consolidated fund. So these are the certain changes or the impacts that we basically see. That was with regard to that particular topic. Please remember that article which was mentioned in the newspaper is very, very important. You can be asked in prelims as well as mains. So make sure that every line that has been mentioned in that particular article, you note it down, you understand it and revise it, because those topics, a little bit, articles 355, 356, 357, 365, all these should be understood well. Coming to the next topic, this was a topic of large language models. Now this topic becomes very important because it is related to the artificial intelligence, and especially then chat GPT and all these softwares, AI softwares are coming up. So we need to understand a little bit. We don't have to go into details. We have to understand what this topic basically means. Large language models, LLMs. Large language models are advanced artificial intelligence systems designed to understand and generate human-like text. You will be realizing that very often now new artificial intelligence softwares are there that when you ask certain things, they are going to respond not in a very mechanical form that earlier you used to get, but very in a form that it will represent that some human being has written, because that human touch is there. And that is what artificial intelligence is trying to mimic. That you need to think in a way like a human is thinking. That is why these softwares are basically very interesting based on artificial intelligence, which are trying to mimic what? The human textual language that we basically write, or the way we write. So, LLMs are the advanced artificial intelligence systems designed to understand and generate the human like text. For example, I've written something. I might have generated certain error while typing in that particular AI software, but the AI software might try to understand what I basically mean by that. So that is very, very important. They learn from the vast amount of written data to predict what comes next in the sentence or to create responses to the questions. Now see, it is also, there's a concept of machine learning also, right? Now, as more and more questions are being asked, more and more data is being generated, so the software itself learns a lot. For example, if I'm doing a daily current affairs, right? Though I'm not using ChatGPT or any artificial intelligence, you'll be realizing that if I'm doing similar things daily, the software would know, yes, he is going to ask something from me on a similar lines. So based on the experience by the software, it is learning continuously and it knows what can be asked next and what can be done next. So that is why we say these models are basically advanced artificial intelligence systems which designed to understand and generate human-like text. And how are they doing? Vast amount of data that is being written or being asked, it is learning from them and it is using it as a means to generate further answers to what is being asked or interpret what is being asked to these softwares. Let's move ahead. How does this basically work? I've simplified it in a very uh, lucid manner. Now, please understand these softwares, when we talk about, uh, these are basically artificial intelligence software. So, there's a concept known as architecture. This architecture, again, as you assume that this building has an architecture, these softwares also have an architecture. It refers to the blueprint of how the artificial intelligence system is built, organized, and connected. This basically represents the blueprint, how the software is working, how those neural networks are connected, how the functioning takes place. So this is like a blueprint. Yeah. Training. The model predicts next word and sentence based on the context provided. Now what happens? This is a time when any, let us say, a blueprint has been created, we will be creating a software. Now the software will be trained because initially certain data has to be fed to that particular software, and based on that more learning would be created. We'll put more data, more data. Obviously the artificial intelligence software will be used the internet also. Based on the learning that we have fed and based on the amount of data that it gets from the internet also, lot of training exercises going on, because that training will help the software to respond to any question that we ask. That means this is a training phase. Next is enhancing accuracy. You will be seeing that in case of chat GPT also, chat GPT 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, the accuracy is increasing because based on the feedback that the humans are giving, those errors are being reduced. And you will see the various commands prompt that are there, those are being reduced because unnecessary command prompt leads to making the software go in a haywire manner or a wrong path. So what they're trying to do is, next step is increasing the accuracy. That means what is being asked, the answer is more precise to what is being asked. What generally happens if you write something on Google, you will get everything related to that particular topic, not necessarily what you've asked. So that is why what we are trying to say is that increasing the accuracy in these models become very important. First is the architecture, second is the training phase, third is the increasing the accuracy of what is being asked. Because when you are accurate, it is more human-like. Right? I'm asking what is your name. The human being is responding that my name is this is the thing, this is the thing. So that means you are more accurate. That is why in UPSC, if you write something that is not required, that is why your marks are cut. Clear? So these are the three simple working phase. Now, what are the problems of LLMs? What happens is that these are based on very large computers which consume a very high amount of energy. So there are like energy guzzlers. So that is a major problem. Carbon emission, because it is consuming a lot of energy. Obviously, we know that major source of power generation is also thermal power. Now it will leading to carbon emissions also. Next is pre-trained limitation. I told you in the previous slide also that during the training phase, people tend to feed certain data to those softwares. If that data itself is problematic or has a lot of issues, what happens is that forms a wrong base for that artificial intelligence software, and then later on the magnitude of the error will increase. And that is why when you ask some questions, you might be getting wrong answers to a great extent. That is why in the phase of enhancing the accuracy, you need to delete with the wrong inputs that were put in the training phase of that particular software. Next is syntax understanding. Now, please understand, syntax means the arrangement of words in the sentences. Every language has a different set of arrangements. Every language has a different set of words that are being used. Now, though these softwares are modernized, they are learning, but every language has a different syntax. So right now, when we talk about asking certain questions and telling the software to convert into some other language, you will see that there are errors still there. Whenever you see a particular, let us say, a comment in, let us say, Instagram, there's a button known as translate. You translate it, though it is going to translate it to a, let us say, great degree, but it might not be absolutely accurate. Those are also working on these models. Instagram, Facebook, even Google is translating the things, because what is being asked or commented, you translate it in a very prompt and a quick real-time manner, right? So these are certain problems. Clear? Let's move ahead. Now, there's a concept or an article that was mentioned, that is women-led development in Rajya Sabha. Now, what this article basically deals with is Rajya Sabha is promoting a women-led development in implementing the various measures. For us, simply pertaining to this particular topic would be wrong. We have to mention what obviously are the steps being taken by Rajya Sabha, but we need to see it from a very broad aspect. When we talk about this, in the initial article, it basically mentions about how Rajya Sabha is promoting and what are the measures taken by the House as well as the Secretariat. So we will be covering this and the other aspects related to this particular topic. Now, please understand, what do you understand by women-led development? Please see. It is an approach where women actively lead and shape the development agenda, participating in decision making and planning and policy implementation. What does this mean? Women, from being passive participants, are shifting towards what? An active participants in what? The development process, policies, planning, and implementation of those policies and planning. So, more proactive participation of women is basically women-led development. It doesn't mean that we are suppressing men, not at all, please. We basically want to say that women who have been, let us say, outlined or marginalized in the development process are being brought as a equal contributory to the development agenda that is taking place. That is what is women-led development, because these things can be asked in your mains examination. Where there is a need for a women-led development, what are the various constraints and issues and how can we resolve them? Before answering that, you should know what is women-led development. So this is a basic concept. Let's move ahead. Now, there are two things that I have mentioned here, right? Why women-led development is being talked about. I have mentioned certain statistics over here. That is a current status. You'll yourself realize that the marginalization of the women as well as the problems that the women are facing. Along with it, we'll see the status or the poor status of women in India. If you see the sex ratio, if it is 943 according to the 2011 census, if you see the female workforce participation, it was 30% in 1990, it is 19% in 2021. A rise in the crime against women, we have seen according to the National Crime Record Bureau that there has been rise. During the COVID time also, we saw tremendous increase in the cases of domestic violence. You can see rapidly every day cases of rape are being coming. According to the various reports, every hour 4 rapes are reported. Now those are reported. Imagine the number of rapes that would be taking place. Those are heinous crimes against women are rising, and they are on a continuous exponential curve rise that we are observing. Women contribution to the GDP. We know that 50% of the women, close to 50% are there in the population, but 18% contribution is there merely. So that means they're not working, or there are constraints to them working, and they're not able to contribute to the economy. Gender Inequality Index, India's rank is 108th out of 193 countries, which is a poor rank. if you see the child marriages, we see 23.3% according to the National Family Health Survey still get a child marriages taking place. Just imagine, in we have been independent for so long. Even in 2019 to 2020, if we see that 23-24% child marriages are still taking place. Out of the total marriages, these percentage are the child marriages. Now, we can ourselves understand that the status, I could have put even 10, 15 more parameters. The conditions are not in a favorable position with respect to women. So that is why this makes the women-led development approach very, very important. Now comes the aspect with respect to what Rajya Sabha has done. Now see, reconstitution of the vice chairman's panel where 50% are women, empowerment of the secretariat, that means women have been given an important role with respect to the positions in the secretariat, obviously based on the merit. Commutation facilities for the women who are coming to the secretariat and the Rajya Sabha. Leadership roles in respect to various jobs in the secretariat and in the parliament. Training facilities have been provided to them. Even gender sensitization, that means the men and the other people around in the secretariat as well as the Rajya Sabha are trained about the sensitive issues that women undergo. And obviously, proper training is required. Along with it, internship facilities have been provided by the Rajya Sabha where women especially have been favored. That means they should be part and they should lead and they should learn from what are the constitutional provisions that are going on, how the government workings takes place. So women are being given equal role over there. So we see certain steps by the Rajya Sabha, but do you realize that are these the only things? We have to see it from a very broad aspect. What is Government of India also doing? So I've mentioned certain schemes and certain laws with respect to the central government that has taken, like Nari Shakti Adhiyan 2023, which provides 1/3 seats being reserved in Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, and the Delhi Assembly. Abolition of triple talaq, Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, schemes like Poshan Abhiyan, that is National Nutrition Mission, PM Ujjwala Yojana, PM Mudra Yojana, Mission Shakti. All these things and schemes are also there to make the women lead. So when we are studying the articles, it is important that we see it from a very broad perspective, right? Next, this is one of the topics that was mentioned in today's newspaper. It mentions about demographic advantage and Indian economy sweet spot. Now, please understand. What this article basically deals with is that it talks about directly or indirectly the concept of demographic dividend and whether that demographic dividend can be used to reap the economic benefits. So over here in the introduction, he talks about the median age being close to 28 years. And we see that if this is not reaped, if the demographic dividend is not reaped, then a lot of problems would be there. So he talks about continuing with the reforms. Over here, all these reforms are basically mentioned. Over here, skilling is also a reform, impact of AI and all. So these are all reforms that he has mentioned. Now, if you want to understand the topic, obviously when you read the editorials and articles, you know, okay, this is the major concern. So what is the important thing? He says that reaping the demographic dividend is important. And for that, what all things you need to do? We'll see that. After having read this, there's an analysis of this particular article. See, this is something that I have put over here in order to make you understand it better. The concept of age composition structure in India, 0 to 14 years, according to the 2022 data, 25.3%, 15.6, from 15 years to 64 years, 67.8%, 65 years and above, 6.9%. Now, please understand that 15 to 64 years is basically the working age, right? Working age. Now, please understand, if these working age people are, let us say, working properly in the economy, contributing, then that would be beneficial. If not, that would be a liability. So what, according to the economic survey, is this working age bracket percentage will keep on increasing till 2040. After that, what will happen? Because the fertility rate is decreasing, the number of young people would decrease and the aging population people will increase. And after 2040, this percentage of working people will decrease, as we are seeing in Japan. That is a very later stage, obviously Japan or Germany, where the working age population people are decreased. So that means their economy will suffer. So what we are trying to say is, the working age population will keep on rising till 2040. Now, if that will keep on rising, What will happen if we make the proper use of this people who are in this working age with respect to economy? We can reap benefit out of it as a whole country also, and for the individual people also. This reaping of benefit is known as the demographic dividend. In case we are not able to, and that means these are out of economy, not working, what will happen? It will create a demographic disaster. It will create a demographic disaster. That means this particular bracket is very important for us. There are various problems associated with that, and that is why in this particular article that is mentioned, we are talking about reaping the benefit of demographic dividend. Again repeating, the working age population is from 15 to 64. These people are expected to, let us say, being working in the economy. That means they will be involved in the economic activities. Currently, very few would be involved. If more number of people within this age bracket are involved in the economic activities, it will be beneficial for the country and economy and them also. For that, it requires they should be skilled, working in proper, let us say, job sector, or being promoting entrepreneurship or doing something good. If not, what will happen? These set of people could not be contributing to the economy and as a nation also, and for themselves also. That means there are going to be liability for the country. If this thing continues, there will be a demographic disaster. If there are, let us say, used as a resource, let us say economically, and they'll be contributing to the country well, so what will happen? It will be a demographic dividend. So this is very important, because 2040, according to this economic survey, says that after that there will be a decline where the young population will slowly keep on decreasing and the aging population bracket will keep on increasing. So that is why we have to take the best use of it. Let's move ahead. Reforms needed. Now, what the article mentions, along with the article, I've mentioned certain extra points also. The article says there is an imbalance, because let us say the agriculture has close to 52% who are directly involved in agriculture, but is merely contributing from 15 to 18% to the GDP. Now, what is important is agricultural reforms are required. Now, there is a Dalvi committee. It has presented close to 15 reports. It is required that those reports and the recommendations are implemented. So there is reforms in the agrarian sector, where we are seeing so many people contributing only 15 to 18%, right? So we need to reform the agriculture sector. Next, we see new sectors of employment. Let us say the toys industry, tourism, logistics. These are places where new kinds of jobs are coming up. So promotion of new sectors is very important. That will provide them alternative sources of employment. We need to basically reform the MSME sector. There are various hindrances that the MSME sector faces. We need to basically provide them with all the benefits through which it can be nurtured well. Why? Because it provides employment to close to more than 11 crore people, and it is responsible for 42% of the total exports that India does. So it is important that MSME reforms are there. Few days back, I had dealt with the article of MSME. What is the definition? What are the constraints? And what can be done? So please refer to that article also from the daily analysis of the Hindu. When we move ahead, we see that skilling. According to the economic survey, only 4.4% of the workforce between this age is skilled. Now you can yourself imagine, if 4.4% is skilled, how are they going to be getting proper jobs? No. That is why they would be working in, let us say, very low paid jobs, possibly not being able to contribute to the economy or suffice their families also. Next is public-private partnership. It is important that public-private sectors basically work together, on-job training is given so that the practical experience is there and the people get more exposure, and practical experience can lead to other sources of, let us say, jobs that can be created to them, and their practical experience becomes very important. Example, people doing software engineering but have no experience of the industry will find it very difficult to adjust in the industries. Next, proper implementation of the national education policies, because the national education policies focuses on the foundational skills, critical thinking. If it is implemented properly, it will be very useful. Recently, few days back also, there was an article where the vice president voiced his opinion that the national education policy should be implemented. I had discussed the national education policies and all the dimensions. Please, if you had read that, it will be easy for you to understand what are the foundational skills and the critical thinking that I'm talking about right now. Next is investment in the infrastructure. That will basically again create a lot of job opportunities. Next is the mindset. Please remember, entrepreneurship boosting and self-employment is very important. Only 2% jobs are there in the government sector. 98% are again self-employment or on your own that you do, right? So what is basically the importance is that over-reliance on the government would be a wrong step. We need to be entrepreneurs ourselves, try to get some ideas and work towards creation of certain, let us say, startups or certain or businesses that would be basically helping the country also and you also at an individual level. Let us move ahead. Problems that India are facing. Please understand, there is high unemployment. According to the Indian Employment Report 2024, states that the youth involved in economic activity has declined. Youth involved in economic activities have declined to 37% in 2022. Now, this is again a constraint. Aging population, we have seen post 2040, the aging population would be increasing. That would be automatically out of the working age bracket. Again, that would be like a liability with respect to the demographic dividend. Next is resource scarcity. We know that resources are going to deplete because the population is increasing. For example, can be United Nations said that India would be a water scarce nation by 2025. We are already seeing those examples in various states like Bangalore and Delhi. Lack of planning. We have seen that because the haphazard planning is there, population is increasing, urbanization crises are being seen. Again, Bangalore, Delhi, Gurgaon, Noida, we are seeing this. Participation of women is low. We just read an article right now. The women participation in the economy is low. Now, that itself is a liability or a problem for country. Out of the 50% population, women who are working also contributing merely 18%. That means participation of the women should also be pushed so that we can have a women-led development that we have discussed right now. Next is role of the other vulnerable sections. We need to realize the scheduled tribes, scheduled caste, minorities, OBCs, and other people should also be important stakeholders in the development process. Let's move ahead. The last article is with respect to the death penalty. This comes into the context where we are saying that rape and murder of a doctor in West Bengal happened, which basically led to the Aparajita Women and Child West Bengal Criminal Law Amendment Bill 2024 being there. Now, over here, we will discuss the various aspects that are being present and understand what this article basically talks about. Please understand. Status. According to the National Crime Record Bureau, in 2022, 4 rapes happen every hour. Now, this is only the reported aspect. Remember, there would be many more which are not reported. Now, when we go ahead in this editorial, we see that global scenario with respect to death penalty. According to the Amnesty International, 112 countries have completely abolished death penalty. Overall, 114, which include those who have completely abolished and some who have not abolished on law but are not practicing. So 144 are those which have abolished completely, plus those who haven't abolished but are not practicing. So 144 countries. On the other hand, 55 countries are there who have death penalty as a part of their policy or the law. If I take the South Asian case, you'll be realizing that Nepal and Bhutan have completely abolished the death penalty. Maldives and Sri Lanka have in their law death penalty, but they're not practicing. But countries like India, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Bangladesh are still practicing the death penalty. Now, arguments for the death penalty, please see it very quickly. This is very important. First is retribution. Retribution means a key principle that real justice requires a people to suffer in proportion to the crime that has taken place. That means if you have committed a crime, you will get a penalty, or let us say an outcome would be equivalent to what you have committed. So that means as a principle, retribution, it is a principle of law and justice. Next is deterrence. Deterrence would be, it would refrain the other people from basically doing that particular act again. Third is closure of the victim's closure for the victim's family, because the victim's family might have suffered due to various crimes that have been committed to their relative or the child, and a death penalty will basically lead to the closure of that particular topic and justice to the families. Last is burden on the taxpayer. We have seen Kasab, who had committed horrendous crime. He was being kept with a lot of security and everything was being granted. Humongous amount of crores of work being spent on his security. So keeping the person in jail is actually in heinous crimes a liability. What you can say arguments against them? Statistical data have said that deterrence, the deterrence basically does not lead to fall in the grave crimes or crime actions that take place. This is even mentioned by Justice Verma Committee. Statistical evidence does not confirm deterrence. Next is risk of wrongful execution. In case some wrong execution takes place due to certain judicial misinterpretation, that would be the worst case scenario that can happen. Next is reforms versus revenge. We need to understand that many people coin that even a person who has committed a grave offense can be reformed, can be changed. So that debate also comes. Next is moral argument. Moral argument says that it is a duty of the state to protect its citizens and the people who are staying there. It is not the duty to take the life. So that is why the moral argument debate comes here. Next is mental health issues of the accused, because before the death penalty is awarded, very often happens that the accused is in a jail for years. His already mental condition has deteriorated, and then giving him death penalty would be again going against the moral law. Please understand, by the death penalty, we are talking about that via the legal changes, we are trying to bring in social changes in a society. Now, please understand, we as a author over here mentions that independently we need to focus on social changes also, like for example gender sensitization, beta padhao, for that matter the men also should be made responsible. For example, in the case of the victims, or let us say the rape cases, it is simply not beti padhao beti bachao, it is the men also need to be made aware that what you are doing, you should be made aware of the various issues that are prevailing and how they perceive or see women. Next is even the aspects of sex education also become important. Next is there are certain reports. Law Commission report 35 report of 1967 says that abolishing death penalty is not a solution, it should be retained. Even Rajendra Prasad versus State of UP 1979 also mentions, the Honorable Supreme Court mentions that we need to not abolish death penalty. It is a part of the law and should be retained. Again, this is a very important judgment by the Supreme Court in Bachchan Singh versus the State of Punjab 1980, where the Supreme Court says rarest of the rare cases. That means in case of rarest of the rare cases, death penalty can be provided. So what we are trying to say is death penalty, according to the analysis, we can say should not be abolished. It should be retained, but as mentioned in the Bachchan Singh case, it should be used in the rarest of the rare cases. This would be an appropriate ending when you are writing your answers also. This was the analysis from today's The Hindu. Hopefully you enjoyed the analysis, you liked, you learned something. This is Harpreet Singh from PW OnlyIAS English channel signing off. Take care, and as you all say, Jai Hind.